Hello there. Welcome to the Truly Criminal Network. We are excited to have you here. We do hope you enjoyed our last video. We loved your comments. Today I want to talk about trust, about the masks people wear, about the devastation that follows when someone's true face is finally revealed. Shameka Oliver was a 30-year-old mother of 4 beautiful daughters living in Jackson, Michigan. She met a man who promised to love her and help raise her children. He seemed stable, caring, and committed. She had no idea that behind his promises lay a violent criminal with 8 open felony cases. By the morning of May 28, 2020, Shemica would be dead, shot outside her home by the very man who vowed to protect her family. How does someone hide such darkness? And why did a system designed to protect people like Shemica ultimately fail her? Before we continue, I want to ask you something. Have you ever trusted someone who turned out to be completely different from who they claimed to be? That moment of realization, that sinking feeling in your stomach when the truth emerges, can be devastating. I want you to share your experiences in the comments below. What made you realize someone wasn't who they pretended to be? What were the signs you missed? And if you're new here, our community at Truly Criminal Network doesn't just watch these stories. We learn from them. We examine what went wrong and how similar tragedies might be prevented. If that's the kind of content that resonates with you, hit that subscribe button and join our community. Turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support helps us continue to tell these important stories and possibly save lives through awareness. Now, let's learn more about Shameka. Shameka Oliver was born on December 2, 1989, in Jackson, Michigan. Family and faith formed the foundation of her life from the beginning. Her parents, Solonda R. Oliver and Mark A. Brown, raised her in a home that valued compassion and service to others. These weren't just abstract concepts, they lived them daily. Shameka attended Holy Light Baptist Church where her uncle served as pastor. This spiritual foundation would shape her approach to life, instilling in her a deep commitment to caring for others and building strong community bonds, values she carried throughout her too short life. After graduating from Jackson High School in 2008, Shemica channeled her natural compassion into a career path that would allow her to make a tangible difference. She found her calling in healthcare, eventually securing a position as a supervisor at Renaissance Northland Home, an assisted living facility. There, she was responsible for ensuring elderly residents received proper care and dignity. Colleagues consistently noted her exceptional work ethic and genuine concern for those under her care. She didn't view her role as just a job, it was a vocation. Shameka approached each day with dedication, seeing her work as an extension of her values. Above all else, Shameka was a devoted mother to her 4 daughters, Antanaja, Amariana Oliver Ruff, and Asia Jane Oliver Gamble. Motherhood wasn't something she took lightly. It was the center of her world. Friends often witnessed her creating special moments for her girls. She'd dress them in matching outfits for family occasions, plan activities that brought them together, and instill in them the same values of compassion and service that guided her own life. Despite the demands of raising 4 children while working full-time, Shameka prioritized quality time with her daughters. She created a home environment filled with love, support, and stability. Her daughters saw in their mother a model of strength, kindness, and resilience. What makes this story particularly heartbreaking is how these 4 young girls lost their mother to someone who had promised to care for them. Have you ever witnessed a parent's extraordinary dedication to their children? Share your thoughts below. Those who knew Shameka describe a woman with an infectious warmth. Her smile could light up a room. She possessed a natural ability to make others feel valued and heard. She maintained close friendships throughout her life, particularly with Aunt Wone Ruff and Alyssa Eubanks, who provided unwavering emotional support through life's challenges. These connections sustained her through difficult times. Shameka's defining characteristic was her selflessness. She consistently placed others' needs before her own. This generosity of spirit extended beyond family to colleagues, friends, and even strangers. It was this very quality that made her vulnerability to manipulation all the more tragic. Rodney Stevenson wasn't just someone with a checkered past. He was a man with a lengthy record that should have raised immediate alarm. His criminal history included multiple home invasions, showing a pattern of violating others' personal spaces and safety. Court records revealed numerous drug-related offenses that stretched back years before he met Shemica. Most concerning was his history of aggravated stalking, a charge that directly points to obsessive, controlling behavior toward previous partners. This wasn't just a man who made mistakes. It was someone with a documented pattern of escalating criminal behavior. At the time he entered Shameka's life, Stevenson had 8 open felony cases pending against him. 8. Let that sink in. He was actively navigating the court system for multiple serious offenses while beginning a relationship with a single mother of 4 young girls. The system had repeatedly flagged him as dangerous. The details of how Shameka and Rodney first met remain somewhat obscured, but what followed their initial encounter paints a clear picture of calculated deception. Rodney presented himself to Shameka as a man ready for commitment and family life. Exactly what a hard-working single mother of 4 might hope to find. He made grand promises. He would help raise her daughters, provide financial stability, and be the partner she deserved. He projected an image of respectability and reliability, carefully concealing his ongoing legal troubles and violent tendencies. To Shemica, dedicated to her children, faith, and career, these promises represented hope for a complete family unit. Friends later recalled how Rodney would talk about building a future together, making specific commitments about supporting her daughter's education and activities. He positioned himself as the solution to the challenges of single parenthood, offering what appeared to be genuine partnership and support. In public, Rodney crafted an image of respectability. He attended church with Shemica, engaged with her friends and family, and presented himself as a stable, caring partner. He spoke about responsibility and family values when in the company of others. Meanwhile, he was navigating a complex web of criminal proceedings, bail requirements, and legal obligations stemming from his numerous felony cases. This stark disconnect between his public presentation and private reality demonstrates a profound capacity for deception. Those who interacted with him casually had no idea about the violent history that followed him or the pending legal consequences he faced. What began as courtship evolved into a serious relationship over time. Rodney incrementally integrated himself into Shemeka's household, gradually assuming a role in her daughters' lives. There was nothing rushed or obviously alarming about how the relationship progressed. He built trust slowly, first establishing himself as reliable and supportive before moving to deeper commitment. This measured pace helped normalize his presence and prevent questions about his background. By the time they were fully involved, Shemica had developed emotional investment in the relationship, making separation more difficult if concerns arose. The relationship followed a trajectory that appeared healthy on the surface. In hindsight, subtle indicators of trouble likely emerged. Perhaps Rodney was vague about his whereabouts during court appearances. Maybe he received calls he wouldn't answer in Shemica's presence. He might have been unusually private about his past or deflected questions about previous relationships. There may have been moments of disproportionate anger over minor issues, outbursts quickly followed by excessive apologies and affection. Friends might have noticed how he gradually isolated Shemica from her support network, citing needs for family time or expressing subtle criticisms of her friends. His financial situations may have seemed inconsistent with his claims of stability. Perhaps he borrowed money with elaborate excuses about temporary hardships. Most concerning would have been any possessive behavior toward Shemica, tracking her whereabouts, checking her phone, or expressing unfounded jealousy. Did you ever notice these types of behaviors in someone and only realize their significance later? What signs do you think friends and family should pay closest attention to? Domestic abusers typically employ similar psychological tactics regardless of background. They oscillate between periods of warmth and coldness, creating emotional dependency through unpredictability. They isolate victims from support networks, making them reliant on the abuser for validation and connection. Rodney likely employed these strategies, gradually increasing control while maintaining plausible deniability. He probably minimized Shemica's concerns when raised, twisted situations to blame her, and used her children as emotional leverage to maintain the relationship. This manipulation would have been particularly effective against someone like Shemica, naturally giving, committed to making relationships work, and determined to provide stability for her daughters. The weeks preceding May 28, 2020, were marked by increasing tension in Shemica and Rodney's relationship. According to friends who later spoke with investigators, Shemica had begun asking questions about Rodney's past. It appears she may have discovered information about his criminal record, possibly learning about the 8 open felony cases he had concealed from her. Sources close to the investigation suggest that Shemica had expressed concerns to close friends about aspects of Rodney's behavior that troubled her. There are indications she was contemplating ending the relationship, prioritizing her daughter's safety and well-being. This period likely created significant stress for Rodney, who stood to lose not only his relationship, but potentially face heightened scrutiny from authorities if Shemica shared what she knew. The discovery of his hidden criminal activity represented a loss of control, something that often triggers violence in abusive relationships. May 28, 2020, began like any other spring day in Jackson, Michigan. At approximately 7 a.m. on Chittock Avenue, residents were starting their morning routines, preparing breakfast, getting ready for work, or seeing children off to school. Inside Shemica's home, the exact sequence of events remains unclear. But what is known is that a confrontation occurred. Whether Shemica directly confronted Rodney about his criminal past or attempted to end the relationship, the discussion escalated rapidly. The argument moved outside the home, where neighbors would later report hearing raised voices. What happened next occurred in a matter of moments. Rodney produced a firearm and fired a single shot at Shemica. In an instant, 4 daughters lost their mother. A community lost a caregiver. Friends lost a confidant. All because a man facing multiple felony charges couldn't bear to lose control of the narrative he had constructed. The sound of gunfire prompted immediate calls to emergency services. Jackson Police Department officers responded swiftly, arriving at the Chittock Avenue address within minutes of the 911 calls. Officers secured the perimeter following standard protocol for an active shooter situation. Though it quickly became apparent this was not a random act of violence, but a targeted domestic incident. Additional units arrived to manage the growing crowd of concerned neighbors and to establish a wider safety zone. Emergency medical services were dispatched simultaneously with police, though their intervention would unfortunately prove futile given the severity of Shemica's injury. First responders found Shemica lying motionless in the front yard of her home. Medical personnel immediately began life-saving measures, but the single gunshot wound had caused catastrophic damage. Despite their best efforts, Shemica was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner would later confirm that the shot had been fired at close range, indicating the direct and personal nature of the attack. In a cruel twist, investigators determined that Shemica had been shot just steps away from the home where her daughters were inside, the same daughters Rodney had promised to help raise and protect. The proximity highlighted the profound betrayal. Unlike many domestic homicide perpetrators who flee the scene, Rodney Stevenson remained at the location. When police arrived, he was still in the front yard, the weapon discarded nearby. His demeanor was described by responding officers as surprisingly calm, showing neither panic nor remorse. This emotional detachment often indicates premeditation rather than a crime of passion, though prosecutors would later debate this point during trial. Officers immediately detained Stevenson, reading him his rights before transporting him to the Jackson County Jail. His initial arrest was technically for a bond violation related to his existing felony cases, a legal maneuver that allowed police to hold him while building the murder case. The speed of his apprehension meant no manhunt was necessary, sparing the community additional trauma. However, questions immediately arose about how someone with his extensive criminal history had remained free to commit this act of violence. News of Shemica's murder spread rapidly through Jackson. Neighbors gathered behind police lines, many in tears as they learned what had happened to the well-liked mother of 4. Shemeka's church community mobilized immediately, providing support to her daughters and extended family. Colleagues from Renaissance Northland Home created a memorial fund for her children. Parents from her daughter's school organized meal trains and childcare assistance. The outpouring demonstrated how deeply connected Shemica had been to various community circles. Many expressed not just grief, but anger that a man with Rodney's history had been able to enter their community and destroy a family they all cherished. We're halfway through Shemica's story, and I want to pause here to ask, what do you think about how our justice system handles individuals with multiple open felony cases? Should Rodney have been allowed to remain free while facing so many serious charges? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story has impacted you, please hit the like button to help our algorithm reach more viewers with these important messages. Your engagement literally helps save lives by spreading awareness. And if you haven't already, this is the perfect moment to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth true crime analysis that makes a difference. The investigation into Shemica's death was straightforward in many aspects, given that the shooter remained at the scene. Forensic teams collected the firearm, conducted gunshot residue tests on Rodney's hands and clothing, and documented the crime scene meticulously. Medical examiners confirmed that Shemica died from a single gunshot wound. The trajectory and gunpowder stippling indicated the shot was fired at close range, supporting witness accounts of a direct confrontation. Investigators conducted door-to-door interviews with neighbors who heard the argument and subsequent gunshot. Their statements created a timeline that left little doubt about the sequence of events that morning. Following his arrest at the scene, Rodney Stevenson was initially held on bond violations related to his pending felony cases. Within 48 hours, however, prosecutors brought forth more serious charges. Stevenson was formally charged with open murder, which in Michigan allows prosecutors to pursue either first or second-degree murder charges, depending on how evidence develops. Additionally, he faced a felony firearm possession charge, which carries mandatory consecutive sentencing in Michigan. The prosecution's decision to pursue open murder reflected their confidence in the evidence, while giving them flexibility to adjust as the investigation continued. The firearms charge ensured minimum additional prison time, regardless of the murder conviction. Rodney Stevenson's trial began in late 2021, following multiple procedural delays. The Jackson County Courthouse became the setting for a case that had captured community attention for over a year. The prosecution built their case methodically, establishing Stevenson's history of violence and controlling behavior. They outlined how Shemica had likely discovered Stevenson's criminal background shortly before her death, presenting this as the trigger for the fatal confrontation. Stevenson's defense team attempted to portray the shooting as an impulsive act during an emotional argument rather than premeditated murder. They sought to minimize his criminal history and emphasize moments of apparent normalcy in the relationship. Throughout the proceedings, Shemica's family maintained a stoic presence in the courtroom. Her mother, Shameka Oliver, attended every day of testimony, often accompanied by other family members who wanted justice for Shemica and closure for her daughters. The prosecution's case rested on several key pieces of evidence. Physical evidence included the recovered firearm with Stevenson's fingerprints, gunshot residue on his clothing, and forensic analysis confirming the close-range nature of the shooting. Witness testimony proved crucial. Neighbors recounted hearing the argument escalate before the fatal shot. Friends testified about Shemica's recent discoveries regarding Stevenson's criminal past and her expressed intentions to end the relationship. Perhaps most damaging was evidence of Stevenson's prior aggravated stalking cases, which established a pattern of escalating controlling behavior toward romantic partners, behavior that culminated in Shemica's murder when his control was threatened. After 5 days of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict in early 2022, guilty of second-degree murder. They found that while the killing wasn't extensively premeditated, it also wasn't committed in the heat of passion. Stevenson had sufficient time to consider his actions before pulling the trigger. The jury also found him guilty on the felony firearm possession charge, which carried its own separate penalty. The verdict brought visible relief to Shemica's family. The decision validated what they had known all along, that Rodney Stevenson had deliberately taken Shemica's life when she threatened to expose his true nature and leave him. On March 5, 2025, Rodney Stevenson stood before the court for sentencing. The judge delivered a powerful statement about domestic violence and the devastating impact of Stevenson's actions on 4 young girls who lost their mother. The sentence was decisive: 80 to 120 years in prison for the second-degree murder conviction, plus a consecutive 2-year sentence for the felony firearm charge. The extraordinary length reflected both the severity of the crime and Stevenson's extensive prior criminal history. At 82 to 122 years total, the sentence effectively ensured Stevenson would remain imprisoned for the remainder of his life. The conviction and sentencing provided legal closure, but the profound loss continues to affect Shemica's daughters daily. The 4 girls, Antonasia, Amariaja, Amariana, and Ajajene, were separated and placed with different family members, further compounding their trauma. Shemica's mother took custody of 2 granddaughters, while other relatives assumed responsibility for the others. Despite efforts to maintain their connection, the girls experienced the additional pain of partial separation from their sisters. Family members report that the girls still struggle with nightmares and anxiety. Their grief is complicated by the betrayal from someone who had promised to care for them alongside their mother. Shemica's death reveals critical gaps in our judicial and protective systems. When multiple agencies fail to communicate effectively, dangerous individuals can exploit these disconnections. In Stevenson's case, there wasn't adequate information sharing between different jurisdictions handling his numerous cases. Additionally, risk assessment protocols didn't adequately measure the cumulative danger posed by someone with multiple pending violent offenses. Each case was treated somewhat independently, without a holistic view of the pattern they collectively revealed. Criminal history databases accessible to the public remain limited, making it difficult for individuals to conduct basic safety checks on new partners. Shemica likely had no easy way to discover Stevenson's extensive record until something prompted her suspicion. Finally, there was no mechanism to notify potential victims about Stevenson's aggressive history. While privacy concerns exist, there's a compelling public safety argument for creating better notification systems when someone has pending charges for stalking or domestic violence. Perhaps the most glaring failure was allowing Stevenson to remain free despite 8 open felony cases. His continued release on bond exemplifies how our bail system sometimes prioritizes procedural consistency over public safety. Court records show Stevenson met basic requirements for bond continuation, appearing for scheduled hearings and maintaining minimal reporting requirements. But these technical compliances masked the escalating risk he posed. This case raises urgent questions. Should judges have greater discretion to deny bond when multiple cases accumulate? Should special conditions apply for defendants with histories of stalking or violence? Most importantly, should there be automatic review when felony cases reach a certain threshold number? The absence of early intervention programs represents another missed opportunity. While law enforcement responded promptly to the shooting, preventative support systems weren't engaged beforehand. Jackson, like many communities, has limited resources for domestic violence prevention. Many programs focus on crisis response rather than early detection and intervention. The case highlights a broader societal tendency to address domestic violence only after it escalates to physical harm. More proactive approaches, educating communities about relationship dynamics, providing confidential screening in healthcare settings, and supporting those showing controlling behaviors, might have altered this trajectory. These preventative measures require significant funding increases and cultural shifts in how we prioritize relationship safety. Understanding the common indicators of domestic violence can save lives. While every situation differs, certain behaviors frequently appear. Isolation attempts, limiting a partner's contact with friends and family, monitoring communications, or expressing jealousy of outside relationships. Financial control, managing money without transparency, limiting access to accounts, or creating financial dependence. Emotional manipulation, alternating between extreme affection and coldness, making threats about leaving or using children as leverage in arguments. Privacy violations, checking phones or emails without permission, showing up unexpectedly at workplaces, or tracking movements. Accelerated commitment, rushing relationship milestones before establishing trust, making grand promises early, or creating premature dependency. History concealment, being vague about past relationships, having inconsistent stories about previous partners, or avoiding questions about their background and personal history. Disproportionate anger, responding to minor issues with extreme emotion, followed by excessive apologies and temporary behavior changes. Looking back at Stevenson's behavior, many of these patterns were likely present, but not recognized as connected to potential violence. If you or someone you know may be experiencing domestic violence, help is available. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233, offers 24/7 confidential support, safety planning, and local resource information. Many communities have safe houses providing temporary emergency shelter, legal advocacy, and counseling services. Legal aid organizations often offer free representation for protective orders and custody matters related to domestic violence. Employee assistance programs frequently include confidential counseling services that can help with safety planning. Faith communities increasingly provide trained advocates who understand both spiritual and practical aspects of relationship safety. Most importantly, remember that reaching out is not disloyal or weak. It's the courageous first step toward safety. Domestic violence thrives in isolation. Communities play crucial roles in prevention through collective awareness and support. Neighbors who notice concerning situations can reach out to offer friendship or assistance without directly confronting potential abusers. Simple acts like inviting someone for coffee or offering childcare provide connection points that reduce isolation. Friends and family should create environments where discussing relationship concerns feels safe without judgment or pressure. Employers can implement policies supporting employees facing domestic violence, including security measures and flexible scheduling during legal proceedings. Community education programs can teach everyone, from teenagers to seniors, how healthy relationships function and how to recognize concerning dynamics before they escalate. Domestic violence affects people across all demographics, though certain factors increase vulnerability. Single mothers face particularly high risks when entering new relationships. According to the CDC, approximately 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men experience severe physical violence from an intimate partner. Over 43 million women and 38 million men experience psychological aggression in relationships during their lifetime. The presence of firearms increases lethality risk by 500% in domestic violence situations, exactly what occurred in Shemica's case. Children witnessing domestic violence experience lasting trauma effects. Studies show they face higher risks of anxiety, depression, academic problems, and later relationship difficulties, challenges Shemica's daughters now navigate. Shameka Oliver's legacy extends far beyond her tragic end. Through sharing her story, we honor her life of compassion and service. The dedicated mother, healthcare worker, and community member deserves to be remembered for how she lived, not just how she died. Her story has potential to create meaningful change. Already, Jackson County officials have begun reviewing bond procedures for defendants with multiple pending felonies. Advocacy groups have created educational materials specifically addressing deception in relationships. Perhaps most importantly, Shemica's story reminds us that domestic violence victims aren't defined by vulnerability, but by the strength they show daily while navigating complex and dangerous relationships. This story matters beyond just one tragic case. It represents thousands of similar situations happening right now across the country. Your shares can literally save lives by helping someone recognize dangerous relationship patterns before violence occurs. Please share this video with 3 people you care about, not just your usual social media friends, but specifically individuals who might benefit from understanding these dynamics. Perhaps someone recently entering a new relationship, a single parent, or young adults just beginning to date. If this content has impacted you, consider supporting domestic violence prevention organizations in your community. Their work creates safety nets for vulnerable individuals like Shemica and her daughters. Shameka Oliver should be alive today, raising her 4 beautiful daughters, caring for elderly residents, and sharing her warmth with her community. Her absence leaves a void no conviction or sentence can fill. But within this tragedy lies the possibility of prevention. By understanding what happened to Shemica, recognizing how systems failed her, and committing to community vigilance, we honor her memory in the most meaningful way possible. To Antonasia, Amariaja, Amariona, and Eshigene, your mother's story has touched countless lives. Her legacy lives on not just through you, but through every person who learns from her experience and takes action.